Hello, everybody. It's Tara Boothby with Conversations for Restoration, and I'm really excited to have one of just a really nice guy. This is Jason Clark. If you don't know who he is, this is Mr. Rethinking God with Tacos. Can I say that?
Yeah, that's good.
That's fair. That's
Yeah.
fair.
Uh-huh.
Uh, so, Jason, how do you, I guess, in case anybody who's listening to me doesn't know who you are, how
Right.
how do you
Right.
explain who Jason Clark is?
Well, I'll start with tacos because if you aren't familiar, that's a little odd. But I have a podcast called Rethinking God with Tacos. You've been on it,
Yes.
and we have guests on to have a better thought than the last best thought we had about the goodness of God. And we dive in to all kinds of subjects, grace, Trinitarian faith. We have a lot of the same folks on our podcast that you've had on, and really just can we explore the goodness of God together. And so yeah, that's the Tacos podcast. I am a Canadian originally, by the way. Uh, but we've been in the U.S. since I was 18, and we have a ministry called A Family Story. I'm a writer. I have a wife and three kids. They're all stepping into adulthood. My youngest is headed off to college in a couple of months, so we're about to be empty nesters. And so I do a lot of writing, a lot of podcasting, and then I'm also a creative. I've always worked in creative spaces. When even when I was pastoring, so I did that as well for years. But I've always worked in creative spaces, whether it was music for my 30s or 20s into my 30s, and then my brother and I have a production company, a film company, and so when I am not doing podcasts, I'm working on screenplays and trying to develop uh, particular stories. So
Wow.
yeah,
That's cool.
yeah.
I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah, and this is one of the connects we have with our mutual friend David Peck. We
Yes.
often dive into conversations about storytelling, and he's a brilliant storyteller as well, documentarian. So yeah,
Yeah, that's so cool. And it doesn't surprise me with all the creativity. So even just talk about rethinking God with tacos because it's a pretty important community. There's a lot of us misfits that are gathered in this group. So when you started this initiative, sort of what was your vision or how did it get started?
yeah. I was pastoring until about 11 years ago. I was at a Methodist church. I grew up charismatic, but God's got a sense of humor.
Oh, he
Uh,
does.
yeah. And we stepped away to start a family story, which is our nonprofit. And it worked for a while there as kind of a covering while I traveled and spoke. And I do a lot of writing. I've been writing for 20 years. And I only have one message: God is love. His love is always good. It looks like Jesus. It's this Christological approach to all things. He's the method by which we interpret. And so God is love. His love is like Jesus, always good. And I exist to grow sure today than I was yesterday, and sure tomorrow than I am today. And so we launched this ministry, a nonprofit called A Family Story, which if it isn't family, it isn't kingdom, right? It isn't
Mm.
Jesus came to show us the Father and what it looks like to live confident in His affection as His kid, and so we launched that, and it allowed for me to travel and speak. But because I'm a creative, I often say I'm a right brain guy in a left brain world. Um, the goal really for me was that we could create media content that was catalytic for an encounter with the love of God. And that's where the podcast happened. And yes, I find myself in the deconstructing spaces, if you will, but it's really just the rethinking spaces. It's
Yeah.
the it's the space where we're having a better thought. The best thought I can have about the goodness of God is to think that it's as good as it gets is the height of arrogance. And so the idea that I can't get my head or heart around His love, that it's infinitely better, is something to be celebrated. And so that's what we did. We launched the podcast 5 years ago. We had, our first guest, one of our first guests, I think our first guest was Paul Young.
Wow.
Yeah. And then Brad Jerzak, and right shortly after that, Baxter Kruger. All three, I think, were recently at a conference that you hosted. And then
Yeah.
so many other voices. I've always been a little bit on the outside of the institutional model. They've never known quite what to do with me. And especially after 16 years ago, when I had a profound shift through a series of events over the course of a couple of years, and then a profound encounter with the love of God that was so transformative and so paradigm shifting. And I prayed some prayers and declared some things that day that really took us from, well, the best way I can say it is I had been living from this space. You know, I used to look at the life of Jesus, and he gets baptized before he starts his public ministry. And he goes under the water and he comes out, and the Father says, "This is my Son whom I love, with him I'm well pleased." And I had been living for the first 35 years of my life trying to please God, trying to do something,
Yeah.
to be a minister, to be a better husband, to you know, all of the things that signified that you were a good man, that you were a good follower of Jesus. I've been trying to please God. And the major shift in my life was the realization that Jesus got the well pleased before he did any of the stuff he was famous for. He got the well pleased before he raised the dead or healed the sick or walked on water. All the things that were high watermarks for my charismatic understanding of what it meant to be a successful Christian and a successful follower of Jesus. And so the major shift 16 years ago in my life was that I'm invited to live from his affection. That Jesus spent the first 30 years in his ministry, if you will, was 33 years long, but the first 30 was to be fully convinced in his Father's affection, surer today than he was yesterday, surer tomorrow than he is today. And then finally the Father said, "Hey, let's go do some stuff together. Let's go show the evidence of our union to the world." And that
Wow.
was the major shift that happened 16 years ago. And that became a journey in which everything I do is built upon that understanding. And that's the podcast. And I don't think I answered your question, or maybe I answered 6 questions. I don't
I
know.
think I love it though. And it's fabulous. It's a huge paradigm shift, right? And
Yeah.
that's so much of, I think, what our people, the people that I feel a kinship with right now is this love discovery that
Yes.
says doing it, seeking perfection, trying to do gooder, be
Yeah.
gooder.
Yeah.
It's not working, and it's
Yeah.
God is just love. And
Yeah.
so what does that mean? It's a huge paradigm shift.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that led 100%. That led to I realized the question you asked is the space that I'm in
Yeah.
is one where I'm connecting with folks who would use that word deconstruct. I realized 5 or 6 years ago I'd never loved that word. It felt too violent. You know, for me, repent or rethink or reimagine is better. You know, if you deconstruct without any understanding of a restoration project, that the whole point is restoration, then you just end up tearing everything down. But the bottom line is I'm convinced love doesn't leave us or forsake us, regardless of the journey. And most of the folks that I find myself connecting with are convinced that God looks like Jesus,
Mm,
and they're convinced there's no shadow of turning, or they're growing convinced in this love that doesn't look away. And in that journey, they're running up against the separation message that has been the Western understanding of who God is and our connection to him for the last several hundred years. And certainly in my life, you know, my
yeah.
childhood, I was raised with encounters and understanding that God's love was good. He was my best friend at 5, but from the pulpit, I was getting a message that suggested otherwise, that compromised his goodness in ways that forced me to do mental gymnastics around my connections to him. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, that's been the journey. And the folks that we find ourselves conversating with, right,
Yeah.
is along that line, deconstructing, but madly in love with Jesus, wrestling with the institutional model, trying to find better language and better understanding on some of these theological constructs that were built on separation.
Yeah, I
Yep.
agree. And I mean, like, I like deconstruction as a philosophical term where it's like all of
Yeah.
the ologies
Yeah.
interplaying. But
Yeah.
the risk, and I think I don't know, for me, what pains me is when people have suffered institutional trauma, spiritual
Yeah.
abuse, this cognitive dissonance of
Yeah. Tara. Yeah.
Jesus is my best friend. And then I'm hearing these messages about how I'm missing the mark, continually missing the mark, which I'm always going
Yeah.
to miss.
Yeah.
And then the like sort of Food Network analogy of deconstructing, where then people just start pulling it all apart
Right.
and they're
Right.
left with a real painful
Yeah.
other problem.
Right.
And so I'm guessing, like, much like me, and I'm like, as a psychologist, so much of it's coming into our office, and that's why I'm doing this. But how did you see that, Jason? Like, for yourself or for the people you were providing
Yeah.
pastoral care for?
Yeah. Well, you're right. And there's probably um, only a handful of traumas I can think that are worse than church trauma, than that level of spiritual
Mhm.
abuse that happens when we tell you that. And I'll say I'll step back because I experienced that. We were part of a cult growing up, and so we got rejected in my formative years in such a vicious way, to be honest, that we moved from the East Coast of Canada all the way to Vancouver Island. It was about as far away as we could get. Family disowned us. Right, this is the level of rejection. They suggested that myself and my siblings, as we were kids, would follow Satan. All the things that you say, right? All the horrific
Yeah.
ways by which you're rejected, and it definitely marked me. Um, but the journey for me, and then this is what I share with folks. Uh, I have this phrase. We have this phrase. First of all, that journey that I took is one where Jesus' perfect theology um,
Mm,
began to resonate in ways that was both true when I was 5, true from the pulpits, true that I'd been raised in. Of course, they say that. True at the Bible college that I went, at least how it was articulated. But it became true to me as a foundational place that I would not be moved from, probably around the age of 30, 31. It was like a light bulb went on. Jesus is perfect theology and God is good. And I'm not going to do mental gymnastics around the word good. We have other words for bad. And so I got real stubborn on these two things. Jesus is perfect. Jesus is what God looks like, even before I had the language for it. That's called a Christological hermeneutic now, and how you approach Scripture, your method by which you would interpret. I love Eugene Peterson says Jesus is the definition of words. And that became the foundation of everything. And so when I meet with folks, that's the first conversation we have. And then in that journey, I was stubborn. We have a phrase in my house, I don't know, but he's good.
mhm.
And that phrase has sustained me in so many places, in so many ways, whether it was trying to understand scripture, right?
Yeah.
Where someone would bring up Job and I hadn't fully gotten it yet. And I'm living in the weight of this Western mindset around separation. And I'd go, I don't know. But I'd rather live in the I don't know regarding Job than do mental gymnastics around the word good when it comes to Jesus. And so
Mm,
I would rather say I don't know about Job than somehow compromise what Jesus revealed about the love of God. And the big shift for me after 16 years ago, when I had that encounter, that I prayed a prayer. That prayer that day was, Father, from this day forward, I'll never interact with you based on my needs, my experience, my understanding. From this day forward, I will only and always interact with you based on your love.
mm,
And when I prayed that prayer, I could say it 100 different ways now. What I was saying is, I don't get a say in who you are and in who I am. Jesus has decided that. And I would rather live offended by his thoughts about your goodness than keep doing mental gymnastics around this word.
I think
So
that's
for me,
important.
yeah, for me, I got real stubborn around that. I got real stubborn around the idea that Jesus is what God looks like, and then the discovery of Psalm 22. When I had that shift 16 years ago, I stopped reading all of Scripture except the Gospels. And of course, no one told me I could do that, and I didn't tell anybody because they would have said, "No, no, the whole Bible." But I had to reset my lens, and I knew that the Gospels were the books that had first person revelation of who Jesus was. And so for 2 years, I reset my lens. Jesus became my hermeneutic on all things. I don't know, but God is good as Jesus revealed. And then I wrestled for a little while on the front end of that because there was one story that I still didn't have a handle on, and it was the Father looks away at the cross. My God, why have you forsaken me? And I remember the day I was at a service, and the pastor was telling us about that moment, and he reminded me that it was a prophetic psalm, a Davidic psalm, Psalm
Mm.
22. And I had learned that in Bible college. Of course, it had just been given to me to prove that he was the Christ. It had never been broken down correctly. But as I was in that service, I opened up Psalm 22 and I began to read it. And if you haven't or are unfamiliar, it's prophetic in the sense that it paints a picture of what was taking place at the cross.
Mm.
It pierced my hands and my feet. My bones are out of joint. It was very much a David psalm. You know, it starts out, "Oh my God, why have you forsaken me?" And then begins to highlight, and this is of course what Jesus said on the cross. And then begins to highlight they pierced my hands and my feet. They cast lots for my cloak. Then it says, "In my day of trouble, he did not turn his face from me."
Hmm.
And when I read that, that was probably for me the last piece to go, oh, there's no shadow of turning. The cross was not what I'd been raised to believe, where Jesus had to step in between God's wrath, that a father couldn't look upon us. That breakdown that compromised the goodness of God, right? Right.
Yeah.
Like if any father would ever be able to do that, even to one of his kids, I could never follow him. I was wrestling with, if he is good, then how could that be the case? And when that last piece fell into place, that was the major shift. And so when I'm talking with folks, we're having a conversation about conviction around his goodness and growing confidence that Jesus is what God has to say about himself.
I love that. And there's so much. I'm like, okay, I have 17 billion questions,
I'm talking too much.
but it's fabulous. It's fabulous. And it's like you hang out with Baxter Kruger. I think that like people drinking from the fire hose is just a cultural norm, right?
Right.
But adopting the I don't know, I
Yeah.
mean, that's another huge paradigm shift
Yeah.
for our people who are raised that you need to have the right
Yeah.
answer to give to people, or else you might get in the way of their eternity or some
Right.
false lie that
Right.
we were raised with. So I don't know is huge difference for people like you and I.
Right. And we were raised that we were supposed to know. In fact, faith was
Yes.
defined as a certainty, almost the opposite of what actually faith is. You
Yeah.
know, the invitation into mystery. But when I talk to deconstructors, the thing that I want to give them is people that are wrestling, right? And if that I think that language works for most folks, and at least we understand what it is. The invitation is sometimes you might go, oh, let's just deconstruct, like you said. You deconstruct everything, and then you got a mess, and there you want to argue that there is no certainty. And I appreciate Pete Enns writing
Mm-hmm.
the book, The Sin of Certainty. I know what he's
Mm-hmm.
running at. It's really important. But the other side of that is when you're journeying, I want to say, no, there is certainty. There is gravity. It's called his love. And his love is always good. It's greater love. It's other centered. It's self giving. Therefore, it can be trusted. You can only have connection or intimacy where there's trust. And if he isn't always good, you can't trust him. And
Yeah.
so when I was stubborn around his goodness so that I could find access to his lap. If you can't trust him, you can't climb into his lap. You can't know him.
Yeah.
And so what I want to share with people is no, this love that Jesus revealed is other centered. It's self giving.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, um, we love because he first loved. So if all the law and the prophets comes down to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, love your neighbor as you love yourself, that's not even still on you, because the only
Yeah.
thing on you is to be loved. And
Yeah.
you can't give away what you don't have. And so to grow aware of his affection and his kindness more so today than yesterday is actually what empowers you to live in the fullness of how you were designed to love him, to love others as you love yourself. And so
Mm-hmm.
that can be trusted. And that is also a place where you can be dogmatic while also saying, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know, but I know he loves me. I know he's good. And I won't be
Yeah.
moved from that. And that's the thing, that if you can give that to people and they know it, right? Tara, like you write about this,
Yeah.
you know it inside, in this place here, you feel it. You go, oh, that is true. That I can put my weight down on.
Yeah, and that's what I mean, that's what happened for me when I didn't believe in attachment theory when I was an early psychologist. When I went in and I started studying attachment theory and love
Yeah.
science, and how good and how expansive human love is. And it was like a fasting from faith. I appreciate people like you who touched into your woundedness and then stayed in the scriptures, because there's a bunch of
Right.
us who couldn't. It was too
Right.
painful.
Right.
But
Right.
in the science of love, I was like, well, if this is how loving love is,
Come on.
that's got to be God.
Yeah.
And so love brought me back in to a better understanding of this loving
So good.
God. It
So
is so
good.
good. So I want to ask you, so because I've been thinking about this, and then I just like to introduce my weird questions. So talking about like death and resurrection, and I've been thinking about this a lot lately, going through these pain points in our life. Psychologically, we term is existential crises.
Right.
Existential crisis leads to existential epiphany. And so, like with Jesus, it, it's very similar to this sort of like giving up doing CPR on something that's dying in ourselves, not
Right.
providing
Right.
an iron lung for something that can die,
Right.
and the death that we experience that leads to resurrection.
Yeah.
And then I was like, holy shit, Jesus, like your human experience, it was such that you give us this personification of I know death and resurrection.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I don't know if you've thought about that, or how you think about the human experience of God and the gift that Jesus joining us in humanity gives to us.
Phew, yeah. The
Here's just
incarnation.
like 17-hour question.
Well, there's the incarnation, right? Is maybe, I mean, it's maybe the most amazing thing I can't fully understand, and maybe never will. But it reveals the profound value of humanity, and the sense that that we're invited into divinity in a way that I don't even know. That sounds odd to folks, but it works if you understand the nature of self-giving love, and you
Yeah.
understand the Trinity, right? But maybe I'll tell this story, and then maybe it ties in because, like you said, that's a vast subject.
It's a vast question. It's very kenotic.
Yeah, yeah. Um, the my favorite one of my favorite stories, because I think it aligns, is the Peter story, and particularly when he goes, just before the garden, and just before his denial, in which Jesus basically says, "Hey, Peter, Satan has asked to sift you like wheat,
Mm.
but I've prayed for your faith. Uh, After you've failed, or this is the Jason version, on the other side of this, that you be life, or to your brothers, that you would be life, or I think that's the phrasing, to your brothers. That basically, Peter, you're going to fail me. He's already told me you're going to deny me 3 times. Peter's denied it. And then he says, yeah, but after I've prayed for your faith. Not that you're not going to fail me, but I've prayed for your faith. This is that thing, this I don't know, but you're good thing. I've prayed for that. I've prayed for that. And also, I see the other side of it. You're going to be life to your brothers. And then Peter, you know the story, he pulls the sword out and endeavors not to defend Jesus. I mean, I think Peter believed that's what he was doing at the time, but really he was defending his thoughts about God, his theology, his ideology, his empire building, authoritarian, hierarchical thinking about the kingdom of God. And he's rebuked, and he follows Jesus into the temple grounds, and 3 times is confronted with his relationship to Jesus. 3 times he denies, and as he denies the third time, the rooster crows, and they catch eyes from across the courtyard, and he runs out and he weeps bitterly. And when I look at that story, and I'll finish the story just so folks know, eventually they meet on the beach, And 3 times Jesus restores him with a question about his
Mm,
love. But when I look at that story, there's so much of my story in that, and so much of the death and resurrection story in that. That the death of our understanding of who he is. Like I feel for Peter because I've been in the garden swinging my sword in my own insecurities, desperate. Like he's not a swordsman. He's a fisherman. Like you know what I mean? Like he's pulled a sword out and he's doing this thing that is so outside of who Jesus is. He's never seen Jesus act like this. He's never seen him operate like this. But I've been there. And when Jesus said, Satan is asked to sift you as wheat, I look at that and go, oh yeah, the sifting was actually something Peter invited into his life, but it was a
mm,
beautiful sifting because he had these thoughts about the nature of God that Jesus wasn't going to leave him with. And so he's like, but I prayed for your faith. I've invited you into the sifting that I don't know, so you could come through the other side and know that he's good, so that you could have a death of ego and a death of um, self salvation, if you will,
mm,
and actually discover my love on a beach where 3 times I'm going to ask you, do you love me? And you're not going to be able to answer it
mm.
until the third time where you say, Lord, you know. And at that moment, I see a resurrection taking place in Peter, an invitation into the incarnational life of Jesus. He says, feed my sheep. And finally, Peter can be trusted, at least to the next extent, to feed, right? Because you can only give
Yeah.
away what you've awakened to. And I don't know if that's a direct answer to what you're saying. I do think that's the journey we're on over and over again is being, and sometimes like Peter, violently set free from our horrific understandings and our participations with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a glorious answer, Jason. And it's sort of like, again, the newness, the new normal for us in this, I don't know, leaning into the
Yeah.
mystery
Yeah.
um conversation, the spaces that you and I live in. There isn't a pat answer that we're looking for. It's
Right.
sort of like I love that unexpected reminder of looking for death and resurrection. And Peter is another example. Like Peter is a fallible human just like you or I.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
of course he had things he needed to die to himself. Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
good psychology.
Yeah.
Die to the
Right.
garbage. Die to the
Yeah.
garbage.
That's good.
You
That's
know.
really good.
Yeah. Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's I think that's great. And it's Jesus knew before.
Yes. Yeah. And the marker, I learned this because in love there is no fear. And so when I find myself in a space, and even those who are deconstructing, this would be helpful. You find yourself in a space and somebody says something and you get anxious and defensive. Well, that's a good sign you're not sure in love yet,
Yeah.
right? Like that's a good like if you feel the need to pull out your sword, that's a good sign you don't have the whole story.
Yeah.
That's a sifting space because perfect love casts out fear and it casts out anxiety and it casts out desperation. Those are things you feel, but they're markers, like you said, of what you need to die to and what you need to invite perfect love into so that
Hmm.
you can actually walk in the fullness of who you are. Like that,
Yeah.
that's and I'd be curious how you navigate that with folks, because imagine you're with folks all the time that you're helping rethink.
Yeah, yeah, and when you're saying this, it reminds me there's a saying, you don't have to attend every fight that you're invited to, but a part of the Jesus-y thing that we're leaning into is, or the action tendency of Christ, because it's a verb. It's
Yeah.
this doing of the Jesus way is we don't have to attend any fight that we're
R-
invited to,
Right. Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's beautiful, like the love lens shifts so much.
Right.
Now of course I fight with my husband and my children and things like that, as I'm sure you
Me
do
too.
too.
I've never had a fight ever. Not one. No, just kidding.
Never. Okay, let's talk about
Yeah,
this.
that's a big red light.
But this is part of, so in your book that's coming out, Rethinking God with Tacos, and it's beautiful. The cover is gorgeous. I love it. I love that you have such a great photo of yourself on your book.
Thank you.
But even just the cover gives us such important sound bites. So what you and I are doing. This is sort of like an example of reclaiming the gospel of love.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's a subtitle. We were
Hmm.
going to do something fun and quirky with tacos, but at the end of the day, we it's in the title, so we'll be all right. Lots of spicy conversations in there. That book is and I've written a handful of books. This one's a little different. Most of my books are memoir style, running at a particular subject with the same through line. I share the same through line with Paul Young. We've talked about it. My through line is trust. And so this is no different, but a bit of a different style. This actually is 18 chapters, and they're intentionally in purpose. What is the gospel? Which I have Baxter Kruger open up with that, and then union. And I can read them through, but it's
Yeah.
yeah,
I have.
union or the cross, union, a Christological hermeneutic, and on and on and on. We talk about identity and grace, the church, the kingdom. We eventually get to universalism and hell and justice. But
Mhm. And
there's about
inclusion, which I love our conversations about inclusion. So I'm excited
yes,
for that one.
yeah. How can you have a revelation of the love of God that doesn't dive into, I say this, if you're not growing ever more inclusive, you're not maturing in love.
Ooh,
That's the evidence. You see it, by the way, if you need scripture. And in Peter, by the way, let's stick with Peter,
yeah.
around Acts 9 or 10, I believe it's 10, where the sheet comes down three times of food he's not supposed to eat, and he's having a dream. And then the third time he awakens to arise and eat. And he's all
Mm,
three times arise and eat. The third time arise and eat with a knock on the door. He follows a servant to Cornelius's house, where he discovers, by the way, Cornelius is a Gentile. So let's get this straight. First of all, you want to talk about continually growing a leader that's maturing. This is the evidence you're maturing. If you're not maturing in inclusion, you're not maturing in the nature of the gospel. And so
beautiful.
so here we have Peter, 10 years in. Are you Jewish?
Me?
Yeah.
No,
Just checking. I didn't think so. Me neither. So you and I weren't invited.
we're
You
not
and I,
invited.
for the first 10 years of this glorious church that we all talk about and how beautiful it was, and it was stunning. But for 10 years, I wasn't invited. I was not allowed to be a part of that church. I wasn't included. I was a part of the them. And yet, Peter, when the fullness of time is maturing as a leader and understanding the gospel, rises and walks to a Gentile's house where he discovers the same spirit that's dwelling within him is thriving within Cornelius and his house. And he says, surely God shows no partiality.
Yeah.
That's the gospel. And he baptizes them. The evidence of the gospel in your life is that you're growing ever more inclusive. But back to this, I think I went to the inclusion chapter early. Anyway, this is the book that we're running at, and the idea is that I'm taking conversations. This podcast is we're 6 years in. We got 200 episodes, amazing guests, and I wrote it, by the way, before your guest. All the guests from season 6 didn't make it. Sorry.
That's okay. Write another book.
I'll have to write another one, but I finished it this year. But I finished the first draft at the end of last year. But it is my best ability to take the main themes and questions that have been coming up in our community on Facebook, and the conversations we have in the podcast, and put them in an order in which you can build line upon line, and
Yeah.
and then with union and trust is the through line for this book. So it's taking conversations and my thoughts and takeaways from them. I think it'll be helpful. I'm excited about it. But yeah,
I think it looks like, I mean, from what I have, right? And there's a workbook and all these beautiful resources. It's well laid out, very readable, digestible chapters, like all the things that make a book that you can actually get through. Like these aren't
yeah,
like 30-page chapters of,
yeah, yeah.
profoundly
Yeah.
intelligent thought and words and all the stuff. It's like, let's talk about things like
Well,
people.
yeah, there's some really profoundly intelligent things, and then I talk, and that evens the whole thing out.
And then it's kind of funny, like there's the comical subtitles with the,
Right.
the little taco
We
jokes
do have
because
fun. Yeah, with
yeah,
the taco stuff. We do. It's a lot of fun.
yeah, it looks brilliant. I'm really excited about it, and the
Yeah.
and all of the cool launching stuff that you're doing with this book.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
community orientated.
Yeah. We've had the thing about this podcast that I didn't see coming was about 2 years in. I was getting emails regularly from folks that started once a week, but eventually almost every other day. And they kind of had a similar theme. It was, Jason, the podcast has been life changing. I've found language for all these different people I didn't know. I thought I was alone, and I've found all these different voices, and I'm finding language. Second, I've been church hurt. Almost all of them talked about there's no place that I can fit, and anytime I bring up something that I'm discovering, it leads to rejection, and I've got these wounds. But I'm also excited and encouraged. Like, and then the third thing they would ask is, "Do you know anybody in Peoria that thinks like this? Do you know
Yeah.
anybody in
Yeah.
Austin that thinks like this? Do you know all around the world?" And so we started the Facebook group, which is almost at 8,000 people now. And it's a beautiful place. It's fair, it can get a little rowdy in there, but mostly we've done a good job as making kindness the foundational way in
It's
which we
so
interact.
kind. And when it gets a little rowdy,
Yeah.
it's like there's just this like kindness
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
people get so kind.
Yeah.
And it's not like it doesn't feel like a delete or a cancel culture. It's sort of like, oh no,
Yeah.
no, we really believe in love, this
Yeah.
immense love. This is how much love
Come
we
on.
believe in.
Come on. That's what we're growing in. And it is
It
that
is.
way. Yeah.
It's
And
amazing.
So it's been beautiful, and in that we've endeavored to be intentional along the way. And so the next step of intentionality for community is, some folks are saying, like back then, getting emails that were, "Hey, do you know anybody?" And it is a great place. Like, if you're in Peoria, I'm like, "Hey," and they ask me, I get those emails, so I'm like, "Go to the Facebook group, throw it in the Facebook group, and guess what? You're gonna have one of my favorite things is seeing pictures of people having tacos, of course, in some town where they've drove 20, 30, 40 minutes to meet with other like hearted folks. But with intentionality, we're starting um, a tacos group where we'll have guests, and um, there'll be a fee, and if you can't afford it, it's a monthly fee. But if you can't afford it, we've got some ways that we can help out that way. But just there's been folks who's like, "Hey, I would like to go deeper. I would love to have some deeper end conversations with Jason or with some of the guests." And so we're going to try and do that, and we'll see. We'll see. Everything along the way has been an experiment. But there is and you can speak to this, Tara. There's a growing, in my mind, a growing, in my experience, a growing yes and awareness to a love that doesn't look away,
Mhm.
and a father that doesn't leave, and a goodness that can be trusted, and a restlessness around anything that smacks of separation
Yeah,
and,
I
and
agree.
hierarchy. So go ahead.
To me, yeah, this is yeah, I just love everything that you're saying. I love this phrase you said, and I don't know if I've ever heard it before, church hurt. That's a good one. That's
Yeah.
helpful. That just like sort
Yeah.
of it depathologizes it in a way as well that makes it more like accessible in a way.
Right. Yeah.
I don't mind using the word abuse
Sure.
and trauma, but church hurt is also just like that might feel a bit safer for someone.
Sure. Yeah.
I do really I love noticing how my field of psychology has hurt and helped the church as well,
Right.
because people have a better understanding of our dignity, how we are deserving of respect, how an integrated person feels good inside, that there's a
Mm.
necessity for positive view of self, positive view of others. And then that leads us into this like, well, I should probably have a positive view of God, and maybe God should have like all of that psychology stuff that has helped us to say this a, a God that maybe didn't like his kid and killed him. It doesn't fit with good psychology.
No, no, no. One of my favorite things, and having you on was I would say would fit in that. One of my favorite guests or conversations to have is with
Mhm.
psychologists, because they're about results over their ideology or theology. And
Yeah.
so they're willing to go, well, okay, that theology, that's what I was raised with, but that doesn't actually help anybody be transformed. That doesn't actually help anybody be changed. It actually is detrimental. And so I love those conversations, because I feel like the psychologist has somewhere along the way went, yeah, even if they haven't figured, now most of the folks we have on have figured it out, but even if they weren't figuring it out as they were going, they were quick to go, that doesn't work. And I may have to rethink my theology later, but I'm going to do the thing that works. And that's beautiful. What you just said gets me excited because,
Yeah.
yeah, for so long, um, and of course, in the charismatic traditions that I grew up in, Pentecostal a little bit, but charismatic, there's not a lot of value for what you do, and
Oh yeah.
um, and
No,
and that's a problem.
yeah, and I was raised to think psychology is bad and like all these things, but then there was no place for me and psychology saved me and gave me a way to do ministry
Yeah,
because the church didn't have a place for me. Now they
yeah,
do.
yeah,
Now
yeah.
they do.
We're
And
figuring it out.
we're
Yeah,
figuring it out. And I
yeah,
think too, it's like what's interesting because yeah, I it's really not appropriate for me to put my beliefs on others when I'm trying to help and support them to have psychological
yeah,
healing. But
yeah,
that's what's beautiful about our culture when we realize we're just looking at the mystery
yeah,
and we're just sitting beside each other being curious. I don't have to convert you to my belief
yes,
system.
yes.
These conversations, I'm like, this is okay to talk about how some of us are healing into a meaningful existential epiphany, which is good
Come on,
psychology.
come on.
And I'm not telling people what to believe. And you're not telling people what to believe. You're just like, this is a cool thing I've been thinking.
Yeah. I love the and the liberty for those
Mhm.
of us who did wear that minister hat for a while, or or just the Christian hat, and the weight that I used to feel of I have to get you to say something or agree with something, as opposed to the conviction I have now about a measureless love that
Mm.
walks down every road with every person. It's not that he's at the end of every road; he's on every road with every one of us. He's the Emmaus Road Jesus, who will hide himself, by the way. He will actually come to you as a stranger if you already have a preconceived idea who he is, so he might better reveal to that burning place within you his kindness and his affection. And so when you know that there's no shadow of turning, he's on every road with everyone, then all you get to do is be fully present as Jason in the moment, and you get to be a walking revelation of his kindness, of his love. Now the
Yeah.
only I'm not under pressure to like you said, and you don't have to get you to come into alignment. Instead, I know that love is the answer that aches within your heart, and if I can be a walking revelation, that we're in the long game, and or as Baxter says, the long arc of love.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah.
it's just like just doing the next right thing or moving within love's kind, as a lot of our friends talk
I love
about.
that phrase.
And I think of like kids and like with love, it's just like surprised by love and surprised by love again. And
Yeah.
then with our little kids, like I was my husband and my kids are on Vancouver Island right now, and I'm in Alberta. And so I was talking
Uh-huh.
to them on the phone. I was talking to my Jason on the
Uh-huh.
phone, and we have a little term of endearment. It's so dorky, I'll say it anyhow. We say love dove. So I'm like, I said to Jason, I'm like, love dove. And then he didn't say, I'm like, say love dove. So I hear a little voice who's sitting beside daddy, and my son says love dove. And it's just like that surprise
Yeah.
by love. But
Yeah.
that surprise by love comes from an archetype of love.
Yeah.
And
Come
that,
on.
because it either is a true reflection of God's love, my
Yeah.
child saying this cute little endearing thing
Yeah.
to me,
Yeah.
or there's no God.
Right. Come on.
I think. And then I'm like, and then what? Like that,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
then how do I believe about love?
But that's the thing that if you talk back to the incarnate, that's what is true. That's
Mhm.
what you're speaking to, I imagine, when you have someone in the room that is
Yeah.
wrestling. It's how do I connect them with the fact that they're loved? How do I connect them with their true inherent value? And
Yeah.
how do I help them participate in love, right?
Yeah.
Um,
To get our lens on,
yeah,
so that we see what's hidden in plain sight.
yeah,
And we can vary with our children, especially. I mean, with the empty nest. If you
yeah.
need me on speed dial, you and your wife, as you're recovering, let me know. But
Yeah,
you'll be there with like all the moments you've missed
yeah,
because of the ones that you've caught. But it's
right.
so easy for us to like bypass or not embody my little boy being so sweet and loving.
Yeah, yeah. How old is he?
Um, he's 7. He was
Oh,
at
come on.
the summit with me And he loved Paul and Baxter and Brad so much.
I bet.
He's just in heaven. You know, the little kids that come around and we're all
Yeah.
talking about love and they're just like,
Yeah.
this is really cool. These grown-ups are talking about something good.
Yeah. And they're so now I haven't had a actual physical face to face with Brad or Paul. I'll see Paul later this year
Mm.
for the first time, but Baxter, but all of them are this way. But Baxter and I get to connect probably 4 or 5. We have a television show we do together called
It's
Cross All
amazing.
Worlds. It's a lot of fun. I just was with him uh, last week, I believe. Yeah, last week for 4 days, 4.5 days. We just have a blast. But yes, personified love of God, very pastoral. But I'm grateful too for you for all these voices, right? And that's what, by the
Yeah,
way, that what the book does is it's highlighting. There's probably 40 voices highlighted in there. And by the way, when we launched, I was lonely 6 years ago.
yeah,
I didn't know but a handful of voices, and that podcast actually launched out of us being kicked out of our church because
yeah.
I'd written an article again. It was a little less painful, but still for my kids painful and my wife. But but what a beautiful spot we're in to have hundreds of voices like yours and like theirs that are speaking to the all-inclusive, measureless nature,
Mm,
transformative nature of the love of God with history, right?
yes.
These are the guys that and of course Paul and I connect around storytelling. He's a deep well and has done study, but then you've got Brad and Baxter who can take you back to early church fathers,
Yeah,
and for those theologians who need that left brain to be fully scratched, right? I mean, they're going to take you
yeah.
all the way back and show you. I'm so grateful for those guys, and
Well,
then
to put it in context and the importance of like, and again, that's refreshing in in the institution experience that
yeah,
I had,
yeah,
the church culture, the history just was negotiable if we paid
yeah,
attention, because I could revamp it and make it modern and cool
right.
rather than talking, you know, with I was at a service about the armor of God, and they made it cool about modern armor. And I was kind of like, but you could have talked about Roman culture and the context of
Right,
the time, and it would have been mysterious and fresh, and actually the spirit could move in a different way.
right,
Whereas if we
right,
try to like modernize everything, something really shifts.
right, right. Yeah, I'm grateful, like you said, grateful for those voices who give us that
Yeah.
historical, cultural context. It's huge. It's for me, it was the thing, because I'm so relational and Baxter teases me all the time, but he loves it. Only good theologians are relational theologians, but I refer to myself that way. And he's like, only the ones that are the ones being, anyway, he's a relation, Baxter is too, but he teases me about it.
He gives a great hug.
Yes, he does. He does. But I'm grateful to you. My limitations when you come into the measureless nature of love, and if you've heard me a million times, you'll have heard this story about 500 because I tell it all the time. But if you're new to me, this is the story that I use all the time to explain love. It was putting my daughter to bed. She was 5. Um, she's 19 now. She's the youngest. And I did this with all my kids. But we would play the measurement game where we measured our love. And I would say, I love you. And everybody's done this. All parents have done, I love you to the trees and back. And the game's begun. And what the game is about is can we outdo each other? It's a
Yeah.
winning game. Everybody wins in this game. It's a fun game to play because you're trying to compete with your affection and your love. So I love you to the trees and back becomes I love you to the trees and back, the sun, the moon. And then I add to that and to the universe, and then she adds to infinity and beyond, and back and forth, a Googleplex. And we played this game. And one night I was discovering this measureless love. And one night I said, I love you, a litany of love a mile long. And she looked at me, 5 years old, all clever, and smiled. She said, Daddy, times two.
Um,
And when she said times two, I heard my Heavenly Father say, that's the gospel. The moment you think you understand my love, a 5-year old can blow it up with the smallest denominator they can think of, times two.
yeah.
And the moment you think you've got it, it's bigger than that. And that is, and when you come into that gospel, when you come into that revelation, suddenly the world opens up in powerful ways. Yes, you're going to have to rethink our understanding of hell. Sure. It's not as scary as you think. It's not. Yes, well, universalism might have triggered you. That's okay. That's just a place where the measureless love hasn't infiltrated yet. You know, you've been invited into the width, height, length, and depth of his love to know beyond knowledge, right? To know beyond knowledge the love of God. And so there's things you'll rethink, but at the end of the day, what you'll begin to discover is this vast, beautiful human tapestry in which there are so many modalities. There's, you know, what you're doing
Yeah.
that brings length and depth and breadth to the love of God through what you've studied. And then you look at the sciences, and we're beginning to understand quantum physics, and you realize, oh my
Oh
goodness,
yeah.
love is measureless there. And it's not just some theological construct. It is in your
Yeah.
family. It's in mechanics. It's over and over and over again, this awakening to the goodness of God, the vastness of his love. And what a beautiful moment we're in to be able
It's
to
a beautiful
navigate.
moment. And it's like, and the theologians that a lot of us miss, the early writers. I was just in a class on Gregory of Nyssa, and he wrote this little tiny bit about the importance of the ocean wave lapping on the shore and being present in that moment.
Yeah,
And in attachment language, that is corrective epiphany. The moment your daughter says daddy times two, that's corrective epiphany. And when we get aware of it, it's this sense in our body of like, oh, your
right.
daughter says daddy times two, my little guy says loved up. And it's like, oh my, I feel all the feelings. Now,
Yeah.
a Christian reframe could be that's the kingdom.
Yes.
That's the
And
kingdom
it
in
is.
me.
Yeah.
That is Jesus in my DNA, as Baxter
Yeah.
might say.
Yeah. Come on.
And
You got it.
it's just like the overlapping
Yeah.
and whatever language we use.
Yes. Yeah. And it's expansive. Isn't that beautiful? Because it
Yeah.
is the kingdom. I would describe it that way. And that's the area where I've spent most of my time developing language. But what a beautiful, the podcast for me, the reason I love doing it is
Yeah.
because my language gets expanded into these other spheres. And I realize the measureless nature of his love is is the reality of our existence. And
I yeah. I love what you're doing. I appreciate your podcast. I'm gonna make sure two people, all of Jason's info will be in the description, but it's like trying to find these softer places to land
yeah,
so that we can take a breather. Like I think I'm like take a breathing space, but don't get caught out there in no man's land. It's a
yeah,
dangerous place to get
yeah,
caught.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and so there's these things, these initiatives where people can sort of check out, could I feel safe around people who use the word Christian?
right. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And and that's that's why I love that Emmaus Road story. If folks if this is resonating, I think the book that we're talking about will bless them. But the one before, called Leaving and Finding Jesus, is
Mm-hmm.
really the one about D and reconstruction. And what I love about that Emmaus, I use the Emmaus Road, but what I love about that is that Jesus hid himself in skin unfamiliar to them, to people that knew him intimately, spent 3 years with him.
Yeah.
Had he come to them in the form that they expected, they actually said he played dumb, like he didn't even know who he was, right? He'd never even heard of Jesus, which is hilarious. He couldn't have even been a Christian, this guy. That's a joke. But he shows up. He shows up and he doesn't even know who Jesus is. So he couldn't have prayed the prayer. That's my point. He shows up. He doesn't even know who Jesus is. He's never even heard of him. And they're like, we had thought he was the one. Well, he was the one, but it was infinitely better than they had thought. And the reason he showed up in skin unfamiliar to them, and I often will say he had to introduce himself. I wonder what name he used, to which
Mm,
Baxter said Emmanuel. And when I said why, he said, Baxter said Manny, and I said why? He said Emmanuel, God with us. But when
no.
Jesus showed up, he had to have introduced himself, and then he begins to reveal himself to them using scripture. We don't know which ones, but he reveals himself to them. And it's later when they pull him into the house and he breaks the bread that their eyes are open and they say, did not our, and then he disappears from their sight. They get the revelation of the resurrected life. And they say, did not our hearts burn within us when he spoke to us on the road? And what they're saying is, we knew here that
Yeah.
he was the one, and this caught up. And the moment this caught up, by the way, this is fascinating. The moment this caught up, he disappeared again because this was the thing he didn't want to get in the way of them stewarding this burning right here.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so I love the idea that and I may have lost a little of where I was going, but the idea that he's on every road with all of us, and that he will hide himself in unfamiliar skin, speak to us in unfamiliar voices, but always about the goodness of his love and his resurrection life, so that we can steward this burning and actually awaken to revelation. So, yeah,
Yeah. The
yeah,
voice, well, and that's sort of a litmus test is that the word, the reflections of God are reflections of God is love
yeah,
and God
yeah,
is peace. These
yeah,
things that we know are true. So the reflections or those languages, that's important. I wanted to scoot back. I missed something with you. Was you commented, I think this is important, that a lot of us go through this season of loneliness. And you said before you started the podcast, it was a
yeah,
lonely time.
yeah, yeah.
So, and how do can you just unpack that a little bit more? Because I think I'm always refreshed by when pastors share the stories of how you felt like an other. I was the
Right.
other. I
Yeah,
was lonely. I worried I was not included. And
yeah,
that's mind blowing for a lot of people.
yeah. That's my life, honestly. Until about 3 or 4 years ago, I was never a fit. In fact, the first chapter of this book, I write about. I lived in Jackson, Mississippi for 5 years, which is where Baxter is, and which is one of the connections when I first had him on that I was fascinated by, because I know all of us would claim that our town is the buckle of the Bible Belt, um, because that's just us saying that religion is heavy here. You know what I mean? I've experienced religion and separation and church hurt, if you want to call it that. But I've been in Jackson, Mississippi. That is the buckle. If there's a Bible Belt, Jackson, in the south of the U.S., Jackson, Mississippi, I would argue is the buckle. It is. There's a church on every corner, and there's three in between. If you lived in Jackson for 100 years and you went to church every Sunday, you wouldn't go to every church that exists in the greater Jackson area. And I'm not making
Wow.
that up. It is. Everybody is a Christian, but they're a Christian culturally. Very, very, very few, which means religiously, but very, very few would want to or be willing to risk having a in-depth, intimate conversation, vulnerable conversation about anything, because they're living in a place with monuments built to defend the institution.
Mhm.
And that's where Jackson, excuse me, and that's where Baxter, and that sphere, that's where Baxter grew, convinced in the goodness of God. I
Yeah.
lived there for 5 years. Those were the hardest years of my life, because I have always been outside the box, and because of my formative years having experienced rejection, I had built into me a sniff test and I am not interested in playing games personality. It just kind of came off of me. And so I have a real anointing in worship. I have a real gifting and skill in leading worship. That I finished Bible college, couldn't make the suit fit, started a band, but was always doing music. And so a lot of pastors would, and there's no other way to say it, honestly. The worst word you'd use is prostituted me. They saw my abilities and my skill sets, and the fact that I could lead hundreds of people on a Sunday morning with song and emotion and connection, but would never actually give me any room because I wasn't safe. To them, I was outside the too far outside the box, and so Jackson was profoundly lonely years, and I led worship, and I started the book with this. I led worship in Jackson my first month, and I stayed at this church for 4 years because, by the way, Southerners are amazing people, very, very friendly, and you have to understand the culture. And I led worship. It was beautiful, and I led worship there a handful of times. The pastor came up to me and he said, Jason, he said, you're 2 weeks in a tambourine ahead. And when he said it, I thought it was a compliment. Because I'd come from the Northeast where if they didn't like you, they just told you. And so I thought it was a compliment, but it wasn't. It was a very polite Southern dismissal. He was saying, "No, thank you. We want no part of that." And it took 4 years for me to realize it, to try and figure out how to connect,
Yeah.
and that undermining pastoral rejection that you don't even realize is happening, that Christian rejection that you just it's built on separation, by the way. Everybody's doing the best they can. These guys, if a father looks
Yeah.
away, then you become what you behold. So our structures are built upon our separation understanding of what took place at the cross. That's why it's so significant. And our hierarchies of exclusion, we don't even know they exist, but that's the model. It's who's in and who's out. And there's a guy in the pulpit that tells you every Sunday, even if it's subtle, it's coming through that separation message. Who's in and who's out. Try harder, get to them. And so those were confusing and lonely years. But that phrase, and that would have been 25, 26 years ago when that happened. And up till about 3 years ago, I don't know how many places that I would recycle this, and it would take less years, this experience where I just would be there and not belong.
Mm.
And my wife, I'd be driving home, and my wife would say, "Jason, you're just 2 weeks in a tambourine ahead." And that became our phrase. And eventually, as I
Aw.
as I came into the love of God, and I got my significance and my security from my father, and that happened 16 years ago. Up till then, by the way, I at times was prostituted, but eventually I presented myself in that fashion because I was looking for something. If that makes sense.
It totally does. I love that you're using the term prostituted because I
Yeah.
use the term whore.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever heard somebody else just so freely share that experience of the experience of transactional
Yeah.
relationships.
Yeah.
And that is part of the church hurt spiritual
Yeah.
abuse
Oh
is
my
it's
God.
transactional.
Yeah. And they don't even know they're doing it. They use language, they use the family of
Yeah.
language, but they bastardize it because they operate in the context of separation. So we're
Yeah.
really confused because we hear the language of family, it resonates, it's the truth, but they're not using it in a way that you can trust because it's all transactional.
And because
And
Walter Wonger, and he's like, he has this beautiful narrative letter to a survivor of sexual abuse. It's called Little Lamb Who Made Thee. It's glorious.
yeah.
And he's like, he says the abuser had the same done to him.
Yeah.
And so that's confusing too, because there's
Yeah.
beautiful, really good people in these church
Yeah.
situations
Yeah.
that have had transactional,
Yeah.
transactional,
Yep.
transactional,
Yeah.
you're a them, you're a them, you're a
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
So then, of course, they're accidentally or intentionally doing it.
I would say this very, very, yes, there are people that are bad actors, but that's very, very few.
Yeah.
Most are sincere, authentic, love God, doing the very best they can, but they're doing it in a hierarchical, separation-based structure, and they're just mirroring the theology that they've been given and the experience that they've had, and they're passing it down the generations. And it's confusing and it's hurtful to so many. And so my lonely season was Christian rejection. It
Yeah.
was it was the continual using of my skill sets and giftings, well, never actually I never actually had someone actually father me
Mm,
in a way that you learn, you yearn for. I have an amazing spiritual, like earthly father. There, he's amazing, and so I have been fathered, and my mom and dad did that. But within the institution, that place
yeah.
where, again, I had believed for most of my life that ministry was what I was called to, and ministry looks like this, and all the gatekeepers wanted nothing to do with me. So I
Yeah.
lived, I lived in a psychosis of anxiety and desperation and insecurity until I was 35, and then I had a
Mm,
profound shift. Prayed that prayer, began to root out every area of. When insecurity would come upon me, I would go, oh. In fact, 15 years ago, when I had that encounter, my father said, "Jason, insecurity and desperation are illegal for you to participate in as a son. I don't want that." And by the way, in the charismatic movement, desperation is the high watermark of spiritual maturity. So he was speaking directly to, I do not want desperate kids. That is not my heart for you.
Mm,
And so it's not saying I wouldn't feel it, but I knew it was illegal, and it was a road marker for me to go, Father, I need to get a perspective of who you are as Jesus revealed. And now show me how you see me. And I'll come in alignment with that. And I won't move on with my day until that's happened. But to your loneliness question, 2 weeks in a tambourine, I lived in that Christian rejection for most of my life, to be honest, all the way through, even probably still, although there's a beautiful community, there's a shift that's taken place. But until about 3 or 4 years ago, yeah, very, very much a part of the institution. My wife, when we got kicked out of our church, and these are conversations, you're pulling stuff out I haven't said before, Tara, but
excellent.
when we got kicked out of our church, I said, my wife and I had a conversation with the pastor in which he said, we didn't want to leave. We were like, hey, you guys, it needs to be clear. You're making it clear you don't want us here. We're making it clear we would want to stay. And he's like, well, you can't stay and believe what you believe. And I said to him, we've been here for 5 years and believed what we believe. The problem is that what we believe actually makes room for us to be here. You just found out about it. So the difference
Mm,
is that what you believe says I can't be here. What I believe actually says we can all be here together, regardless if we're on the same page. The only thing that's happened is that you've revealed separation and hierarchy and exclusion. That's all
yeah.
that's happened. And so up until about 5 years ago when we launched this, and then in the last few years, when I launched the podcast, there were like 6 names I could think of. Partly I was relational, and I didn't want to bring people. If I'm connected at this church, you go at the pace of the
Yeah.
people. And so I wouldn't bring people on that I knew would be problematic. But we got kicked out about the same time we launched it. So then I was like, well, there's no toes to step on. So, and in the last few years, like I said, we've come into this space, but we've come into a place of connection. But I'll just say this: that book I write about Baxter in 2 weeks in a tambourine ahead, and I actually I often phrase that or come back to that phrase or that term throughout the chapters, noting all these folks that we've had on who I'm thankful have been going 2 weeks in a tambourine ahead in their own areas of disconnect, and willing to lean into his goodness and trust that the long game of love, which is how I was saying it, Baxter says the long arc of love. For me, the long game of love is he's restoring all things, including relationships. And so
Yeah.
if it isn't happily ever after, it isn't the end of the story yet.
No, no. And I think that too, the 2 weeks in a tambourine ahead is Baxter too. Like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is he's so formative
Yeah.
and has graced so many of our hearts
Yeah.
and so many of the hearts of our teachers.
Yeah.
And this is
Yeah.
I think it's really helpful. And I also just want to scoop this up here because I think you'll agree with me is like you and I also, when we were in the transactional environments, we accidentally oozed transactional misbeliefs onto other people. And that's
Yeah.
some of the empathy that
Yeah.
we can have for those who are
Yeah.
still in there.
Yeah. And that's that everyone's doing the best they can, which I know is Brene Brown, but my wife reminded me when I said it the other day that she'd been saying it long before I ever heard it from Brene Brown. So give my wife credit. That idea that wherever we are, we're doing the best we can. And so there's a whole lot of grace for anyone in whatever stage of the journey they're on.
Exactly. And it's
Yeah.
nice to have nice to have a nice partner, right? And it's
Yeah.
kind of like, how long have you guys been married now?
30 years next month.
Isn't that nuts? Like we're 20 years this year, but
That's awesome.
it's weird because that's what old people. That's like for old people.
I know I am not an old person, but apparently I am. I guess so.
I know we're getting old. So I want to ask you. So I mean, like I know on your thing you guys share taco stories, and I'm
We
not
do.
expecting you to share a taco story. Maybe like a pierogi story. My people might like to know a
Ooh,
pierogi story if you
ooh.
have one. But can you share like I think it's fascinating. I think there's good logic behind what you're doing with it, but I'm curious why the taco stories.
Right. So on our podcast, Rethinking God with Tacos, we end and we have an hour and a half typically conversation. And at the end, we always end with a taco story. So I ask the guest, if they have a good, bad, ugly, what kind of taco. Some folks don't like tacos, and that's okay because we're inclusive. We just find something else and we talk about it. But yes, it's partly fun. When we put that in the title, I was thinking two things. One is I knew I was going to have some smart people on, and I didn't want anybody, or even if I didn't want anybody expecting some sort of high academic experience from Jason. I'm a storyteller and a relational guy, and I don't have those. I can't play on that playground. But mostly, I was, and I love having those guys on, but then I love pulling out the story if I can. But mostly, it was relational. Everything that's good happens around a table, and tacos is just fun. So if you're going to pick a food, and it's a food I very much love, and I will say one of the happy accidents that I didn't perceive happening was everywhere I go now, I get taken out for the best tacos.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
And that's a good thing. But it was very relational and intentional, and it keeps us in a conversational. Some folks think I do interviews, and I'm sure that's happening, but I'm not interested in doing an interview. I'm interested in having a conversation where we find heart to heart connection,
Yeah.
and so tacos kind of keeps us in that vein. So yeah, I'm a huge taco guy, but I'm a pierogi guy. My wife makes pierogies, and so my wife's pierogies would be my favorite. But I bet you I'm a novice when it comes to that.
Oh, okay. And
And
what's your
that
favorite filling? Pierogi filling?
well, she does potato, right? Like that's
Mm,
and so that's what I'm familiar
yeah.
with butter and cheese. I like to put cheese on everything though. Am I allowed to put cheese on pierogies?
Hey, it's your pierogi.
Yeah, thank you.
It's
That's
your
how I
pierogi.
yeah. Sometimes my wife's like, you don't have to put cheese on everything, but
Yeah.
yeah, no, I that would be how I. But will you tell me what's a? I mean, you can put anything in them, right?
Oh yeah, you can put it like some people, the Ukrainians will put fruit in them. And
Ooh,
my people are German heritage. And
yeah.
so we mostly potato, but like potato combinations. And then dill is like you need some
Ooh,
good dill and fried onions if you're eating
ooh.
pierogies with me.
All right, all right. Well,
Yeah.
we'll do that next when we get together. We'll have pierogies and tacos.
We'll work on maybe we'll do a Rethinking God with Tacos Canadian
I
family
like it.
reunion. I'll
Yeah,
talk
I
to
love it.
Brooke.
Yeah,
We'll see if we can cook that up. So, okay, so we're gonna lean into winding things down. Tell us what you have, like the date, the new book, Rethinking God with Tacos drops, and then the Rethinking God with Tacos family reunion, and all of the
yeah.
Jason Clark things. What's going on?
So August 12th, and it's 2025. In case you're watching this 3 years from now,
So I
then you
missed
then
it.
then you can go get it. You can go get it. It's already out. But August 12th is when it releases. That's a few weeks from now. And I don't know when you're going to do this podcast, but and then we have a reunion, our second annual conference here in Charlotte. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina. This is the Queen City is my backyard, and we have Baxter will be with us. This is September 25th through 27th, and you can go to afamilystory.org, and that's where you can sign up or learn everything about it, as well as where you can find me, articles, the podcast, everything connected to our ministry for the last 15 years or so. But
Mhm.
yeah, September 25th to 27th, Baxter's with us. If you're unfamiliar with Damon Thompson, you should connect with Damon, especially if you're in the charismatic space, because Damon preaches like nobody's business. I'm excited. He's become a friend. Dub Alexander's a friend of mine. He was with us last year. He'll be with us again. Brooke will be speaking, Path to Wholeness, and she's incredible. I have a friend,
Yes.
Mark and Julie Appleyard, who are dear, dear friends. They're local and involved in the kingdom and business, and travel all over the world, pouring into folks in that way. And we're gonna have amazing time of worship. I love. We get a little rowdy with worship. So Michael and Bethany Wallace, and then there's probably other things happening. We're gonna have tacos, of course. There'll be an ice cream. We're gonna have a great time. It's relational. It's fun. It's some deep end theology and some comedy nights. And I think David Peck's gonna do a magic show for us.
Oh my word.
So we're gonna have fun. It's
Yeah,
gonna be good.
It'll
Yeah.
be, yeah. So the Rethinking God with Tacos reunion. I'm going to make sure people, like, if you're kind of looking for a place to like peek over the hedge and see what's going on, to see if maybe you could fit back in with the misfit Christians,
Yeah.
the Rethinking God with Tacos Facebook page is amazing. I'll make sure there's easy access to find different ways to link up with Jason below. And do think about going to the Rethinking God with Tacos family reunion. Go for the tacos, stay for the ice cream.
There you go.
Right?
It's going to be good. We're going to have a good time. And I look
Yeah.
forward to getting out that way. Like I said, all of my high school years were in your family's on Vancouver Island. Love that area. It's been probably 20 years, 15. No, I'm sorry. I went skiing in Whistler just before COVID. So other than that, though, I haven't been out there in a
Yeah.
while. So,
We'll
yeah,
figure it out. We'll do, there's gonna be a merge. I can feel it.
that's
I
right.
don't
Yeah.
know when, but we're gonna merge. Thank you so much, Jason. Like, I
Yeah.
just you really are so nice.
My wife, when she was dating me and she married me, she said, I said, "What do you like about me?" And she said, "You're nice." And that's Canadian, by the way. But I said, I want to be dangerous. She's like, "No, I wouldn't. I'm marrying you because you're nice, and you don't get a say in that." So I decided to do it, go ahead and to own nice and make it as dangerous as I can. But
You're dangerously nice. That's like, seems like there's something other focus self-giving in that,
there you
dangerously
go.
nice. So thank you. And then yeah, I just look forward to hanging out again and
Yeah, me too.
sharing all these lovely friends that we have and feeling included in the same heart of love as you.
Thank you, Tara. It's an honor to be connecting with you, and I'm grateful for you. And this is really a lot of fun.
Okay, thanks,
Yeah.
Jason.
Right.